The gaming industry has evolved so much over the past 20 to 30 years, and yet the most odd thing has happened. The amount of game-breaking bugs, shady business practices, and contempt for the consumer seems to have increased rather than declined, as one would expect. Despite the huge leaps technology has taken, the gaming industry seems to be full of trends that seem to set it back, rather than push it forward. Despite gamers' grievances, some of these trends simply won't go away. Welcome to HotFix Gaming. I'm Joy. Today, let's look at 10 of these negative trends in gaming that should stop. Let's get started. 10. Performance issues. This is an issue that seems to be even more obvious lately, with the newer generation consoles such as PS5 and Xbox Series XS. These two powerhouses were marketed as capable of running 60, even 120 frames per second smoothly, and yet games struggle massively to deliver upon that. It almost feels like all this power consoles hold is not being properly taken advantage of. There seems to be a trade-off. You either go back to 40 FPS in order for the games to run smoothly, or stick to your guns, 60 or 120 FPS, but with drastic sacrifices to visuals and even buggy NPCs. There might be a reason why the newest games don't take advantage of the power these consoles hold, and we will explain that later on in the video, so make sure to keep watching. 9. Overhype and false promises. Sure, a healthy dose of excitement is the way to sell your game to consumers, but unfortunately, publishers seem to fall into the trap of taking it too far and spending far too much time and money on marketing without actually delivering on the promise. Peter Molyneux has become a famous example of over-promising in the industry, consistently pushing the narrative that whatever game he's currently working on will be a transcendental experience, promising features, mechanics, and details that never make it into the final game. Watch Dogs had a similar problem in 2014 when, after years of hype and build-up, ended up heavily disappointing their fans. Ultimately, this overhype branded Watch Dogs as a game much worse than it realistically is. The disappointment over the lack of what was promised outweighed the game's positives. This in turn hurt their sequel, which fans were no longer interested in purchasing anymore. Number 8. Terrible PC ports. PCs seem to be oftentimes forgotten about, and it's not just the players that forget about PCs, but developers seem to be oblivious to their needs too. Hence why, at this current moment in time, we have massive issues regarding bad PC ports. A lot of times these bad ports are due to the fact that development teams create games specifically for consoles and treat PCs as more of an afterthought. So while the graphics, performance, and visuals are on point on the Xbox or PlayStation, if you have a PC, you might not get the same thing. Despite the fact that consoles aren't always as powerful as high-end gaming PCs, the components inside of an ordinary PlayStation or Xbox are predictable, and that's the main reason why developers make the games with console users in mind. Another issue with bad ports is the controls. Some games are simply unplayable on a keyboard and mouse. The Dark Souls series and even Elden Ring are known for lousy keyboard and mouse controls. This could be solved by just playing on a controller or gamepad, however it's quite upsetting for those that only have a keyboard and mouse or just don't want to play on a controller. Number 7. Lack of originality in games. The developers' insistence on making only the most profitable types of games has resulted in a gradually smaller choice of genres and games for players. While many avid gamers remember the PS2 and PS3 days, where they would have endless collections of games, nowadays it seems like we get pretty much the same over and over again. On top of that, many large publishers and developers seem to redirect their focus on remastered versions of older games, instead of taking the risk of trying something new. Yes, they want to bank on an already established IP, but what gamers get in the end is just the same type of content in a prettier package. Look at the most recent example from none other than Naughty Dog. Is there really a need for a remastered version of a game that released just 4 years ago? Wouldn't it be better if they focused their efforts on creating a completely new game for players, increasing the selection on the market? Number 6. Unfinished games. In the intro of our video, Fantastic Games That Bounced Back from a Dreadful Launch, linked below, we've explained that in the early days of gaming, developers had to make sure that everything ran smoothly before a launch, as they couldn't go back to patch it up post-release. The old consoles weren't capable of going online and downloading updates, so the end result was that games were launched only when developers were confident that they would run without any problems. But with the internet came this new wave of unfinished games. Instead of taking all the time they need to really nail down all the details, developers are rushed to release buggy, awful games with the promise of patching them up at a later date. It's all done with the potential profits in mind, instead of the consumer being at the forefront. While some games were capable of making a comeback after a dreadful launch, others simply die, with players never to return to them again. And if you're enjoying our list so far, make sure to hit that like button. Number 5. Live service games. Gaming trends like zombies, battle royales, MMOs, and so on come and go, but one that seems stubborn and just won't leave is live service gaming. With more and more developers looking for ways to monetize every little thing, games as a service seems like a trend that unfortunately is here to stay. There used to be a time when you bought a game and you got the entire game. The transaction was complete. Nowadays, games launch only half-finished, with all kinds of extras sold separately. This extends to free games as well, but players are more lenient towards them because they don't cost anything to play unless you really, really want that season pass or fancy skin. Number 4. Microtransactions. One of the more widespread and insidious practices creeping its way into the gaming industry is the implementation of microtransactions in video games that are already full price. It may not be too bad when real money can be used to purchase things that simply add to the experience, like cosmetics or additional content, but it's quite another when microtransactions become necessary to progress or enjoy the game. Game developers will argue that their microtransactions are completely optional, purely cosmetic, and don't interfere with gameplay, which simply isn't always the case. There are plenty of examples of games that offered XP boosts and even skill upgrades for a few extra bucks. Number 3. New games not being purely next-gen. Remember at number 10 when we said that there might be a reason why devs don't seem to really take advantage of the powerful new consoles? Well, this might be it. Despite PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X and S launching almost 4 years ago, many new games and even games that are due to launch this year are still cross-gen. Yes, we know publishers don't want some players to feel excluded, but that comes at the cost of visuals, graphics, and performance for those who adopted the newer generation of consoles. This is incredibly frustrating, as many gamers are still waiting to see what their PS5 or Xbox Series can really do with all that power it packs. Number 2. Always online requirement. There really aren't many reasons why a single-player game should need an internet connection in order for the gamer to enjoy it. Many companies try to motivate this online requirement as a form of copy protection, as in hackers and pirates can't steal the game, so they'll have to buy it instead, but really, they still won't. Another reason, and one that few companies would actually admit to, is for marketing purposes. If you have to be online even when you're playing a single-player game, they can gather data about your gaming sessions and then market certain products to you. And while the always online requirement benefits developers and publishers, all it does is annoy consumers who may or may not have a reliable internet connection. Number 1. Digital games the same price as physical games. The physical retail game's cost covers the creation of the disc, the case, the cover, its manual and pamphlets, shipping, distribution, and retailer costs. While the physical items themselves may actually be cheap to produce, the cuts which go to distributors, transportation, and retailers are obviously a lot higher than the cost of a server to download the digital title. Yet the price for a digital copy is oftentimes the same as for a physical one, which begs the question, what is the point of going digital anyway? Much of Steam's online success can be given how they handled digital gaming. People want to get their money's worth, and if they feel that physically owning the property is not equal to simply downloading it, they'll most likely stick to going out to buy it. But until console gaming decides to follow Steam's success, we don't think this will change. What other gaming trends do you wish would just disappear? Let us know your opinions in the comment section below. And if you want more gaming content, be sure to check out our fantastic games that bounced back from a dreadful launch video, or the top 10 gaming trends that are dying or have already died. Both videos are linked on screen.